Namaste, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Yuva Manch. I am Tanya. I recall having read Scarlet Letter by Nathaniel Hawthorne, Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy, and That Long Silence by Shashi Deshpande. And one theme that was common to all of them was the theme of adultery. In September 2018, the Supreme Court of India decriminalized Section 497 of IPC, which dealt with adultery. And we read about it in the newspapers, heard TV debates, and assigned it to be right or wrong without knowing it comprehensively. Today, in this discussion, we will try to gain multidimensional perspective on the topic. For that, we have with us two special guests who are very well established in their fields of work. I would like to introduce Ma'am Anuja Kapoor, who graduated in psychology from Delhi University and is a criminal psychologist. After gaining expertise in the field, she went to pursue law from CCS University. She has been vocal on many issues concerning the society and has been part of various TV debates. She is also the founder of an NGO named Nirbhaya Ek Shakti. She was also appointed BJP spokesperson Delhi State and has been part of various TEDx talks. The other guest we have is a sociology faculty for UPSC optional, Mr. Pranay Agarwal. Pranay Agarwal is a reputed sociologist, educationist, and mentor for civil services aspirant. He's a member of International Sociological Association established by UNESCO and its Research Committee on Education. He's also a member of Indian Sociological Society. He has studied till master's level and has completed a course in classical sociological theory from the University of Amsterdam and a course in international women's health and human rights from Stanford University. He's also the convener of Indian Civil Services Association, a public commentator, and an articulate voice on social issues. He's the most reputed teacher for sociology among civil servants and teachers at IES Gurukul. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us today. So, ma'am, you are an advocate and you must have handled a lot of cases around this. So, I will start my discussion with the first question to you, which is kindly define for us the legal definition of adultery.
Okay, first of all, I would like to put forward a beautiful question which has been asked by you, because not many people understand the difference between infidelity and adultery. So this is what was your question, I think. So when I give you one answer, you get automatically the another answer. So infidelity means you have a relationship. You have a relationship with the third party outside your marriage, just outside your marriage. It could be with a male, it could be with a female, irrespective. It could be with female, male. So homosexuality, LGBTQ, or if you have your relationship with that person is minor, which again affects you, or a major. So any person you are in love or you have a sexual relationship outside your marriage. So that's infidelity, just having a relationship, a physical relationship. What is adultery? Adultery is when two adults outside the marriage, both of them had to be married, and then they have a sexual relationship. They both needs to be adult and they have a sexual relationship outside their marriage, and they are basically, they have to be married. That is what is adultery is all about. So they have to be married, both of them, where infidelity is just a casual relationship you can have. It can be emotional, it can be sexual, it can be, mental. Usually we call it into infidelity is into a sexual relationship. So that's the catch. Here, the person cannot be married. You can have a married man in your life and you are unmarried, or an unmarried can have a married woman in his life which is older than age. So no age bars, nothing. In the same way, but in adultery, it is on the opposite side. Both of them have to be married in the court of law if you want adultery to be proven. But as it cannot be decriminalized anymore further, so it has been taken off because it was an inhuman towards the women. So that is why court took it off and made it repealed.
Thank you, ma'am. So, sir, can we talk about adultery from the marriage perspective and why people do it in marriage?
Right. So if we look at the Supreme Court judgment, it seems to suggest that the primary reason for adultery is basically, it's like born out of a broken marriage or an unhappy marriage. But if you look at it from a sociological perspective, I would say there can be many other reasons apart from an unhappy marriage why people cheat in marriage. So, and in fact, many people who are in happy or seemingly, fulfilling marital relationships, they also engage in adultery. So the reasons can be varied. For example, to put it in simple terms, it does give one an ego boost, right? If one is appreciated, basically attention is flattering for the best of us. So, and in any marriage, even the happiest of marriages, a certain amount of monotony sets in after a few years, right? There is an element of thrill, which is associated with, the forbidden fruit. In other words, people actually, we do get a kick out of doing something that we know is condemned, right? And not be found out about it. Then there are perspectives which contend that human beings are, essentially non-monogamous. So people seek sexual variety, right? Or to put it bluntly, we are basically animals with clothes on, right? But inside we are all as good as animals. Then you have reasons varying from neglect in marriage, or, oftentimes marriages can turn sexless after a certain number of years. Also, in earlier times, there was a certain sanctity and permanence associated with marriage, which has been fading away with the passage of time, right? So today or increasingly, a number of people treat marriage as another, should I say, an acquisitive kind of an agenda, right? We seek happiness and there is an increasing hedonism in society. So if my marriage won't give me happiness, I will seek, say, sexual happiness outside of it. You have important, should I say, technological developments, which are also contributing. You have had dedicated websites and apps which facilitate extramarital affairs. There was this case of a US-based website, I think it was Ashley Madison, whose data it was threatened that it would be in the public domain, and it led to a huge scandal. And even, say, in our own society, you have dating apps like Tinder, like, these platforms like Ashley Madison, or there was another Gleedon, right, which conducted a very self-serving kind of a survey, should I say.
Yes.
Right? Then you have the omnipresence of pornography, right? It is a reality. It is a part of our social lives, which we cannot deny, right? And pornography also encourages what should I call non-conformist sexual behavior or non-traditional sexual behavior. For example, you would find dedicated porns websites or whatever, channels on them talking about office sex, right? Or sex at the workplace. So people kind of seek that thrill, and that consuming that pornography encourages that kind of behavior. Another aspect we can look at is how masculinity is defined in society, right? So particularly for men, masculinity is also evaluated in terms of sexual virility and what we can term as sexual conquest. And possessing multiple sexual partners is also considered a proof of one's masculinity, right? So it is more mardana of me if I have multiple sexual partners, even if it entails cheating on one's spouse.
Thank you, sir. So Gleedon survey that you were talking about, it actually talked that 90% of Indian marriages are still family fixed. 5% marry for love, and only 1% divorce rate is there. And still we have 56% rate of extramarital affairs. So are we looking at this, we're just keeping marriages for the sake of society, What are we looking at? How are we dealing with marriages in this?
See, the institution of marriage and the family born out of the marital union, it has been one of the bedrocks of human societies since times immemorial. And this is not only the case in India, but across the globe. Right? So now with all these developments that we spoke of and the increasing seeming incidents and dare I say acceptance, grudging acceptance of adultery, you do find that the institution of marriage and family would somewhere be threatened. Right? So as a society, perhaps on the one hand, we do have a decriminalization of adultery on the grounds of, say, gender parity. But we also need to balance it, with efforts to preserve the institution of the family.
Okay, thank you, sir. Ma'am, coming to you, you are also a psychologist. So when we look at a person who is an adulterer, how we look at the psychology of that person, what is bringing him or her to this? The reasons behind the same.
I think he has told you.
Yeah, ma'am,
He has
something on
given
the
you, yeah. So,
elaborative side.
no.
Yeah.
He has already given you the stuff. The only
Mhm.
thing, because he's not a psychologist, but he gave you the same stuff.
Yeah, same stuff, most
So
probably.
he
Yeah.
has, yeah. So I think you can throw another question to me, because
Yes,
that's the same
sure,
thing I
ma'am.
would speak.
Yeah. So, ma'am, we can talk about the development of Section 497 from where it started and its decriminalizing and the discriminative nature that it shows on the basis of gender.
So what happens is that why the court decriminalized it, because it becomes a chastity of the woman. The woman becomes the chastity of the man, and that is what Justice Chandrachud has spoken about it. That a woman cannot be a chattel. She cannot be a chattel to a man. That if she wants to have an affair, or she's been found out, or by her husband, and her husband says it, okay, I ask you to keep it, I have no objection, you keep it. If I have an objection, there will be a FIR against the person who is going to be behind bars, or then FIR is going to be done, or XOXO, the partner, sexual partner she's with. Now this is why it was being decriminalized, that in this way woman was not being allowed to file an FIR against the man's lover. It is only throughout only the women's side. So why there is a gender parity where a male is allowing the woman to have an affair? She can have partners too outside marriage if she is not satisfied in her marriage. This has been clearly on and off given in various judgments by the court, again, Supreme Court. It has also given for the males that they can also have a friends outside marriage, and a woman commits a suicide. Because of this, the man will not be held for that. It is not, she will not be responsible. So what is happening is you can ask for a divorce, but you're committing a suicide and then you're putting up on things, that would not be the right idea. Now, apart from this, because 497A was being taken out because of the same reason, because it is gender biased, and because it gives a bad name to women, where we talk about women empowerment, where we talk about victim rights, where we talk about women rights, we are, on the other hand, tying a woman for not having a satisfactory life. If a male has it, the woman has it. So this is where it was being taken off by the court, not related to any other issue. It's just to bring the law on the equal basis. As you must have seen in protection of the women in Domestic Violence Act, it has become neutral gender, and it has become Domestic Violence Act, DV Act. Now, when we are there in the court, the cruelty can be filed 498, both by males as well as by the females. So the husband and the wife both can take part in this. So we are looking at the new future with laws where the gender disparity is not being seen. It is being taken care of by the courts, and we are asking the women rights on the ground, and it should not be taken as a chisel by a man. So this is what my contention is.
Thank you, ma'am. So it is basically that the decriminalization was a move against patriarchy and gender inequality. We can say that.
Yes.
Ma'am, sure.
Yeah. No. Go ahead.
So, ma'am, my next question to you is: what are the legal challenges, as you mentioned, divorce? So, I guess adultery is one of the reasons that people take divorce. What are
So
the
now,
legal
if you would,
challenges?
yes. So what if you're going to see in the ground of divorce? I have also asked, my PIL is there in the court, it was some time back, on marital rape. That was my PIL only in the court, where it was there in Supreme Court for this marital rape too. And then it went to High Court, and then from High Court it went to the legislative body for the government to see. And then at that time, they did not want to do anything about it. Now, as we are talking about it, so at least we started something on. Now, when we talk about adultery, adultery is one of the grounds for divorce. It is one of the grounds. On adultery basis, you can take a divorce. Now, just saying it, that person is sleeping with my husband. This adultery is basically, again, for it is gender equality. Or male says my wife is sleeping with someone, will not give you a divorce. What you require is a lot of evidence to be proven in the court of law, where you are not only presenting the person's identity in the court with which the other person is, because adultery totally confines it, the openness of the relationship, the intimacy of the relationship, the sexual as well as the various photographs, or we talk about evidence act in this. Here we have to put forward various areas in the code so that it can be talked. Now, just saying that XYZ is usually, because I am also a matrimonial lawyer, so when we are taking care of the women or of the men in the court, usually the first thing they say is ki stuff with the other person. That is how they take care of the character of the other person. Now, you just bring that character onto the ground of divorce, because you're bringing up other people, and you casually bring the other person also and make that person the party of the divorce act during that time. But if that person has nothing to do with you, where that person has not initiated your divorce on that level, like the guy brings that women in the house. Usually women don't bring men in the house. So this is one of the examples where the man brings a woman in the house, and that woman asks the lover, take your wife off from this home. She is no longer going to stay, and you have to choose between me and. So where the woman is there in the parameter, she's there at the crux of it. That proves somehow that this is going to be the part of it. Now, this was again a Supreme Court judgment few days back, where the court has said just saying will not help you. How does she initiated you to bring a divorce? That needs to be the part of the adultery, that that person is having an affair with that person, and how that initiated you for a divorce. Just because he's a casual friend and you suspect, will not bring a divorce, and it is not a cruelty. So the court does not takes it into the account of a cruelty either way of a woman or for a man. So by putting the person on the parties list is harassment, and if you will not be able to prove it, the court also put penalties. So this is, I would say, people sometimes they just talk about it, but the people who are working on the ground level of advocacy, do know how the laws work. And there are times when we have been also going much further to bring the law of sodomy when we're talking about, because now just by saying in 498A, the people are not going behind bars and the cruelty is not proving. So the sodomy will put you behind bars. So again, the court is very much careful on understanding how things to be taken in divorce. So we are very clear on that point. There are many 8-9 points, but in adultery, either you hire a detective and the detectives gives you a proper indication, and you give in the sealed paper, in the sealed envelope to the court for the court's eyes. And you say that somewhere when we see the call records, CR, you look at the call records. But if you're the person you are saying that the woman is working with my husband and she goes out with my husband, and I suspect that she is totally, I'm sorry, the court will not listen to this. The court will say that they are working together, and obviously you will say that there is an attraction. So court looks into the larger perspective, and adultery usually is a difficult task to prove in court, and just saying will not help you and will not give you a divorce. So usually you have to work on the level of adultery. If you really want adultery to come up, then the whole case has to be built up in such a way that you get divorced on adultery basis in the court of law.
Thank you, ma'am. I'll come back to you to follow this up in a minute. Sir, I would like to ask you the role of gender in this, in adultery. And if there is any, what are the challenges both the genders face to come up with an issue like this? The person who's a victim, basically.
If you could please repeat the question.
Sir, I said, what is the role of gender in this? And if there is any, if we are actually looking at both the genders, what are the challenges both the genders face?
Right. So yes, firstly, to put the record straight, while in the public imagination, it is, largely imagined that it is mostly men who stray out of a marriage. Statistical evidence would suggest that increasingly a good number of women are also partaking in the crime of adultery, or no more a crime, but in the act of adultery, right? Having said that, the extent to which men and women commit adultery would be different. So even various studies that we have, they suggest that yes, men do tend to do it more than women. But clearly it is not to say that women don't do it at all. If I'm able to explain it correctly.
Yes.
And another reason for the difference in the statistics that we have for men and women could be possibly because women tend to possibly underreport having committed adultery, right? So adultery is not something which is out in the public domain. Either you go by the statistics or the legal data that you have, or it could be through surveys on which social scientists rely. And in these surveys, the admission to adultery is kind of a voluntary submission by the respondent, right? So men, because it is a sign of masculinity or one's bravado to have strayed, so men may be more willing to admit to adultery than women. Okay. As far as the extent goes, I would like to share with you not the Glidden survey, because that was very self-serving, should I say. There was a study by the India Today group, right? They used to conduct these sex surveys every now and then. And the last in 2019, what it suggested was that adultery is quite rampant. In that survey, you had 20% of all the respondents actually admitting to cheating. Yeah. And in many of these small towns, you found that there is a very high incidence of adultery. So in Chandigarh, 45% of the respondents had admitted to cheating. And the fantasy of cheating on one's spouse has also a very wide appeal. You had 46% people in Lucknow who had admitted to fantasizing about cheating on their spouses, and 85% people in a town like Indore had fantasized about cheating on their partners, right? So point is that, as Jesus Christ had said that let he who has not sinned cast the first stone, right? Or should I say, Hindi में बोले इस हमाम में सब नंगे हैं, literally and figuratively. So point is, it is a social issue which is staring us in the face, and you do have both men and women partaking in it. Coming to the second part of your question, where you asked about how does it affect them differently, or see, in a patriarchal setup, patriarchal in the sense, I won't say culturally, but because of the if you analyze the present social setup, right? So women have lesser earning power, for instance, than men. That makes women more dependent on, right? And given that a wife whose husband has committed adultery, she has lesser options than a man whose wife has strayed. Secondly, in terms of the social definition of masculinity, if a man strays, it adds to his his perceived social perceived masculinity, and if his wife strays, it significantly takes away from his perceived masculinity, right? The presumption being that he's not been able to sexually satisfy his partner. So that is why what we see in a lot of marriages, women would adjust to a straying husband, but not the other way around, right? So there are many such aspects to it.
Yeah, ma'am, following up from Sir's talk, he said mostly women are dependent on the person they're married to. The wives are dependent. And you were talking about hiring a spy and all the evidences that you have to grasp for the legal proceedings. Do you think that the female gender has more challenges when it comes to legal proceedings in this topic? They have to think a lot to look into it, to go to stand up for taking a divorce. And is that having a rural urban connotation to it?
I'm a lawyer also by profession, as you know that. And I already have a case which is for 7 years for divorce. So this is the answer to your question. A woman, even if she's working, she's 7 years old for a divorce. The guy is clearly staying with the other woman. And her child is also being taken away. She's staying with the mother, with the joint property. I have given her that area of residing. The only thing which I am feeling, and we failed to do it in the court of law again, is that bringing that woman on the ground, because we have to prove on various areas that that guy is staying with that woman or he's there. When we're talking about the detectives, the detectives were asking around 1 lakh or around 50,000 or 60,000, and in that is also in one way they want to do it, as you are asking. But if they really want you HD things and all the stuffs, and it's for a month, so definitely the things exceeds. Now, because I would not say that the detectives do not strengthen the case, because then we get a lot of proof. I cannot force my client to give 1 lakh rupees to the person, because the person is my client is also paying me. And when the client is paying me, and then I ask the client to give it to the other person too. So what is it? We look into the different arena of taking a divorce. And that is where we make our cases more stronger on the grounds of the other sexual abuse, and on the grounds of the cruelty, and on the grounds of the relationships they have been sharing with their in-laws. So adultery, again, I'm telling you, just saying adultery will not prove it. The cases may not be there too much in court. Shashi Tharoor case was also, you have seen, it was been there. You cannot just put a blind eye to it. And bigamy, monogamy, when we talk, bigamy is a crime. But if your first wife says it's okay with me, bigamy is not a crime. So if she proves it in the court or she puts in FIR, then bigamy is a crime. So we have funny laws too. So that is where we get difficult, that when one law touches the other laws and it becomes incompetent. So proving something is the court is always a very difficult task. You can file an FIR, the charge sheets can be done in any case, in XYZ if there is a criminal case. But proving in the court of law is where there is a stretch. And that is why we have to be very careful in bringing everything on the board, because we do not know how judges with their own perspective, because jurisprudence law tells you how do you interpret a law in your own basis, in your own ways. I can do it differently. My client can do it differently. The judges, if it is a constitutional bench, it can judge every way in a different manner. So I would say that law is on interpreting ground, and how to interpret a law is on a very different level. So one judgment given by one order can be given by a court, and that order or a judgment can be declined in the further appellate courts and can be again on the higher courts. So it all depends how you prove yourself in the court of law, how good you are with law, and how you sustain yourself and how much your client sustains in the court of law with you and for the client who's also with you. Now there also, that is why we see a lot of hostility in the rape patients. We see a lot of hostility in domestic violence patients, because they do not want to give themselves away from the economic forum, from the economic backgrounds, because I see now most of the women have been working on these areas. If you see in the rural area, you have seen a lot of women are working as compared, I would say, in the urban areas. In rural, women are still working on a very high grounds, and they have been in fields, they have been in masons, they have been doing things, and they sometimes I feel they're much bolder as compared to the women in urban areas, because here in urban areas, sometimes the women are even hushed away. But the same goes in rural areas too. In Panchayat Raj, in Khap Panchayat, when we talk in mushroom courts, the way they do justice with the woman, if she's been raped by XYZ, if they have a woman in their home, the Panchayat or the Khap Panchayat would ask the other people of the to rape the people, or rape the women in the other homes. So where we see all of this, it is a very sad figure. But I would say the law is a handicap. No, I'm sorry, it is not. It's just the way how you fight in court, how well you can verse your laws, how well you can counter the law with another law. So it is very, I think it is one of the catch which all the lawyers should know, that you have to become not an ordinary lawyer. You have to know the law by the fingertips, because that is how you should be able to consider yourself a good lawyer. Because when you're in the court, many things come in front of you, because one law cannot work, maybe the another can. So in one way or the other, how to bring the best out from your case, so that you give, why you are there in the court, you are there for a relief, we are there for redemption in compensation. So divorce is a civil law with criminal law, where you talk about penalties if there is an FIR, or if there is a rape or a murder, and or there is a dowry system. So there are areas when we talk in divorce, we also see civil as well as criminal cases. So I would say adultery is there, but how many people is on a statistical basis is where we talk. And because not many people are able to invest on the higher level or on the higher money grounds, so somehow it goes here way, until unless you have a solid thing that she's in the house and you have pictures or you have people witnessing, and she's been thrown with the FIR, and that things are being there, or the women's cell comes in help, or an NGO comes in help, and you have a solid background throughout, and you have collected those evidences to prove in the court of law. then by those incidences, you can make up your case on a more stronger ground.
Thank you so much, ma'am. That was beautifully and straight out real, actually. Thank you. So, sir, as we were talking, बहुत मैंने ये भी सुना है कि जब एक लड़की डाइवोर्स लेने की कोशिश करती है ऐसे केस में, तो उसको बोला जाता है कि नहीं, फैमिली टूट जाएगी, बच्चा तुम्हारा है. तो हम इस चीज को कैसे देखेंगे? इसमें फैमिली का क्या रोल है?
So yes, you're talking about the role of the family in this whole thing, right? And yes, the first thing we need to appreciate is that as it is said, शादियां इंडिया में individuals के बीच में नहीं, but परिवारों के बीच में होती है, right? So from the very beginning of our marital relationship, it is not merely a relationship between individuals. It is something that binds families and community together. So given that anything as serious as adultery, which is going to have an impact on the marital union, will also have a very significant bearing on the institution of family and in fact the whole community, right? So it impacts, of course, the spousal bond first and foremost, because there is a breakdown of trust, right? Not when adultery is committed, but when adultery is caught. So there is a breakdown of the trust, which is very essential to the marital union. It can have very significant impacts on the sexual health of the family. Please appreciate. So straying spouse can bring STDs or sexually transmitted diseases to the marital union, right? Something
Thank
like
you for pointing out that.
Yeah. So, and not just to the spouse, any future offspring that they have, they can also be affected. So it has an impact on the sexual health. It has an impact on the psychological, very important psychological, and the other respected panelists should maybe able to elaborate better. But it has a very huge psychological cost. So the person who finds a spouse cheating, they undergo a lot of mental agony. Apart from that, you have the whole, trust in the institution of marriage at a societal level also being weakened. So I personally know many adults well into their late 20s and early 30s who are extremely, extremely reluctant to get married because of all the talk of adultery and, cheating and everything that we see in marriages today, right? So the trust in the institution of marriage at a societal level also weakens. Then it, of course, impacts marriage stability. Adultery is an important grounds for divorce, right? And it will have an impact on the children of the couple. So it's not just about the individuals, on child rearing, on the issues of maintenance, who pays the or bears the expenses, right? It will have an impact on various marital rights, including property rights, right? It will also have an impact on the society at large, in the sense the social mores. You may have had a change in law, but changes in society, in the thinking of the people, they do not necessarily accept the changes that law suggests. Law, court judgments, they can only suggest. It is at the end of the day up to the people, the members of the society. So for instance, you do have Section 377 being watered down, right? Decriminalization of homosexuality. But that doesn't mean that homosexual unions have gained acceptance in our society, at least not yet. At the very least, what we can say is that changes in social mores will take time, right? So the issue of adultery should not be viewed only from the lens of the individuals involved, right? Or the 3 or 4 persons involved, but it has a very significant, wider familial and social impact.
So, ma'am, as sir was talking about the psychology of the victim, the family, I would like to talk to you upon that only. How should the family react? How should the people be supportive of the fact कि अच्छा ऐसा हुआ है आपके साथ and we are with you? कैसे behave करना चाहिए उस time में? As a society, as a family, how can you be more responsible to the person who's been a victim of this?
What I feel, people do not, it's sometimes they do not believe in the woman if she speaks. I think I'm just summing up it all in one go.
Yes, you are.
Aren't we as a woman, as a girl, as a child, whenever a young child comes up to you and she would say XYZ has said this thing to me or done this thing to me, the child would not even know, the what about this, what there will be circumstances and what will be the outcomes of it. But when we talk about, because I am again, as I'm more connected with rape and acid attack victims and hate crimes, so I usually come back to on these victims because they are the victims who are suffering more. So when we're talking about adultery, it can be a fragment of imagination. So when we talk about fragment of imagination, people do not believe your fragment of imagination, and more so ever with women who must have had a history of being jealous, of being putting mistrust, or who has, if now as me being a psychologist and I bring emotionally unstable personality forward, where the woman herself is undergoing some kind of a psychological problem. Now, where she believes that the husband is having. Now, how would you know that your husband is having? You will look into the phone, or you will go behind him. Why would he take, when we have, because many people have asked me, how would you know that your person is cheating or your man is cheating? Is that when we say that the phones are not being set outside, they are being taken. So this is what he takes, something which is a general thing.
It's
So
an
he takes
intuition.
inside. Yes, it takes it inside. Or whenever you're trying to talk to him, the phone is the major catch in this. So you have if you have videos in your phones, and that videos can be downloaded, and so that phone needs to be also in adultery. If you put everything on the phone, and if you have something, the Evidence Act has to prove that only just giving you the copy of the WhatsApps or of the video would not work. We also need the phones. We do give an evidence form, and we do give the certificate in 65B, but the problem is Evidence Act. But we also need to sometimes surrender your phone to the court, because the primary and the secondary evidences has a lot of complications. So when we are looking into videos, it should not be tampered with, they should not be morphed into, because in this a lot of morphing do happens. There cannot be a revenge porn. There cannot be the divorce you are taking should not be something on revenge. And you are trying to implicate a person, but just because you brought things in the court. So there could be another case can come up on you is the defamation, because how you have brought things up on the other person. So adultery, how parents look into is, or your friends look into it, is first is shame. The first thing is shame, not the people. You pity yourself. It's not the shame. The other people make you feel. You feel yourself. Now this has happened to me. Then it is what you feel is the bechara feeling. Oh, this happened with me. Now, what will I do? Thirdly, it is a very big thing for a woman when another woman enters in her life. It can be mother-in-law, it can be sister-in-law, it can be your sister, with whoever your husband would be close with, the best friend. So anybody who is there with any other person, she would not like it. Why? Because she will always believe that, and the women are actually have a fragment of imagination, because they're very possessive. They're very, very conscious of this fact that their man is their man. So even if we will even have a pass or a laugh or a casual thing, but if the same thing is happening with a woman and she does it, she likes it, she talks about it, here the woman gender comes up. Here the feminism comes up. Here the things come up. So we have to be very, very vocal on how we talk about some figures in life, and how do we talk in court related to the fact we are bringing in forward to the court. There has to be absolutely undoubtedly an unreasonable doubt that has to prove in the court of law that this is adultery. So it has to be really proven, because one court can say something, maybe Karnataka, Madras, or high courts can speak some kind of a judgment. Again, judgments can be varied on the same cases. Again, it is interpretation. So parents and people and society look up not at you, they look down at you, because even if same thing has happened in their own family, they will just would pinpoint at you, and they will cast you, they will stereotype you, and they will put you on the bar, on the edge. And that is the time when most of the women, they undergo PTSD, and that is the time when women feel suicidal. That is the time when the women realize that they have wasted their time, and they are not beautiful. They are no more loved, and that is the time they also sometimes go out to the another man and to feel wanted, as the other panelist has also said, Pranay, right? Yeah. So he has also spoken on this. So the reasons which again go out is a vicious circle. If you find your husband cheating, you go and cheat. So it is something like tit for tat to make the other person love you. It's not she's going to cheat someone. It's wanting the intention seeker. So she wants more of the intention from the other person. And I feel that I would say the men somehow, they do have this feeling of exploring polygamy, and they do want to be loved by all, wanted by all. And that is why nobody, like, they usually can't settle for one woman in their life, and because they like to go out, they have friends. So for them, sexual intercourse is casual. For a woman, sexual intercourse or going outside marriage is a cause, is a reason. For a man, it is just a sleepover. For a woman, it is an emotional attachment with sex. So I would say they believe in making love, where in this side is lust. So to understand this psychology, we have to put forward more of psychological issues when we're filing in court. That is how that this thing has happened in this. But court also says that if your husband has a friend and you feel you did suicide on that, it will not be impacted on this issue, because court still says that having a friend is not wrong. And in the same way, that is why adultery was also given a good thumbs up for the women too.
Thank you so much, ma'am. You have answered so many questions even without asking. Sir, I would like you to summarize the whole talk, and please elaborate a little on the moral and ethical aspect of it too.
Let me first take up the second question that you have posed, and then we can possibly sum up. Regarding the moral and ethical aspects involved in the issue of adultery, see, one major source of morality is religion, right? We like it or not, and that is across cultures. In fact, the Supreme Court judgment, which has struck down adultery as a crime, also acknowledged, if you have a reading of it, that across religions and across civilizations, adultery is considered a sin, and which is meted out heavy punishment, right? So talking about Hinduism, in Hindu culture, you would see that marriage is of a very sacred character. Yeah. And the purpose of marriage is not only sexual fulfillment, it is also, there are three broad purposes of marriage amongst Hindus, you have dharma, praj, and rati. Dharma meaning performance of one's socio-religious duties. Praj means bearing progeny or having children so that you carry forward your family lineage. And finally, rati, which refers to sexual gratification. So while sexual gratification is an important or a legitimate purpose of marriage, it is not the only one. It is also combined with these two very other important purposes of marriage in Hinduism. In fact, the marriage ceremony, what we call vivah, it is one of the 16 sanskars, the 16 sacraments in the life of a Hindu. One of the important life stages when we undergo a kind of change from one stage of life to another. Right. So if you look at Hindu scriptures, you do have law books like Manusmriti, which are today, of course, condemned as highly misogynistic. Nevertheless, they did impact our lives, the sacred laws of Bhagwan Manu, and they do contain very stringent punishments for the crime of adultery. Right? Yes, there is that aspect that the punishment would vary depending on the caste of the person. Right, for the same crime. Manusmriti also has other aspects which are today, of course, considered very outdated given the current prevailing feminist ideology. So it would suggest that woman should always remain under the care of a father in childhood, and husband in her youth, and her sons in old age. Right. So there is that aspect. But point is that the sin of the act of adultery is considered an immortal sin. You have the very famed story of Ahilya in the Ramayana. So Ahilya was accused of adultery by her husband, and she was kind of cursed for it. Right. And she spent several years undergoing penance for it. And she was finally liberated from it by the touch of the feet of Bhagwan Shri Ram. Right. In the same Ramayana, we also meet Mata Devi Sita, who was banished to the forest only on the possibility of having committed adultery, right, by the same Maryada Purushottam Shri Ram. So we do see that in Hindu mythology, in Hindu culture, adultery is considered a sin and a punishable one at that. You look at the other major social religious demographic, which is Muslims. In Islam, adultery is considered zina. Zina is basically a term used for any kind of unlawful sexual intercourse. Okay, and adultery is a form of zina. Others could be, say, homosexuality or pedophilia and the like. Zina in Islam belongs to the category of what are termed as hudud offenses. Hudud offenses are those which are specifically referred to in the Holy Quran itself. So in the Holy Quran at chapter 24, verse 2, it specifically provides that the adulteress and the adulterer, they both should be flogged with 100 stripes. Right? We can go on and on. In Christianity also, you find that, Jesus Christ himself said that a man incurs a sin the moment he looks at a woman other than his wife with a lustful eye. Right? And in Judaism, which is another ancient religion, you have in the 10 commandments, the 7th commandment, right, which explicitly provides that thou shalt not commit adultery. Point is that across cultures, across religions, across civilizations, adultery is considered as an immortal sin. And the reasons for it are not merely theological or, scriptural. The reasons are also social and practical. So it is to preserve the institution of marriage and family that across cultures, we have this very strong kind of across the board condemnation of the act of adultery.
Thank you for pointing that out, sir.
Yes.
Thank you both of you for joining us. It has been a very great talk for me personally. Thank you, Anuja ma'am. Thank you, Pranesa.
Thank you, Beta. Thank you so much.
Thank you so
And
much.
it was even a good way of listening. Pranay also, so he's very vocal about all the, I think, religion, and on a ground level, he understands very clearly on the issues. So it was a treat to listen to him. So good. I'm happy that I was being a part of this fun discussion.